Brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I understand, despite the low numbers in the room, we have something like 1,400 people have dialed in to watch. Whether we've still got 1,400 people watching at this stage, I don't know. But I should congratulate all of you who have actually turned up today and have made the effort. As I was coming in this morning, I saw a post on LinkedIn from the Zurich Climate Resilience Alliance, who are hosting a session this week on extreme heat. And they have cancelled their session as a result of extreme heat. So, definition of irony. Anyway, good afternoon, and thank you, Sebastian, for that fascinating session. And Tony, if he's still here, I have also shared experience in building and financing toll roads, in my case, between South Africa and Mozambique in my past. By way of introduction, I'm James Thomson, in fact, the Deputy Policy Chair rather than the Deputy Police Chair, but I have, in my time, also been the Chair of Police and Deputy Police, so not totally inaccurate. But in this context, I'm here as the Deputy Policy Chair, and in layperson's terms, the Deputy Political Leader for the City Corporation. And I'm delighted to conclude today's summit and offer my own reflections on the task before us. They are reflections, I must admit, made all the starker by the heat wave that we are experiencing here in London, and indeed the second of only 2 red weather warnings ever issued by the Met Office for heat, both in the last 4 years. And indeed, listening yesterday to the UN Secretary-General's superb address in the sweltering Guildhall, I was struck by the suggestion of a delegate sitting nearby that perhaps we turn off the air conditioning as a reality check to remind us of the increasingly intolerable, indeed dangerous, and in some cases deadly climate conditions in which much of the world, less insulated from the effects of a warming planet, must survive. It is the kind of thought experiment we undertake far too seldom in the West, but its moral implications are surely compelling. Shakespeare's The Tempest, a play that draws its name from the violent storm which opens its drama, prompts the audience to recognize that history is present in every innovation and in every apparent novelty. Shakespeare observes that what's past is prologue. However modern and sophisticated the science, and however new the terminology, the challenges we consider today are, in many respects, as ancient as the city of London in which we meet. Almost 2,000 years ago, when the Romans established a new trading outpost on the Thames, they selected a site with an understanding that its economic success would be determined by its environmental resilience. The higher ground on which Londinium sat, and indeed London sits today, as well as the river which cut through its centre, the Walbrook, together promised a prosperity less vulnerable to tidal flooding and sustained by a reliable supply of fresh water. And as we convene in that same city today, with Walbrook, now an underground river running literally next door to Mansion House, we are engaged in a similar exercise, an effort to insulate economic growth and value from the ravages of a challenging climate. Of course, the scale of our contemporary challenge, as well as our capacity for joint action, now reflect the dimensions of a fully globalized economy. Before going any further, I want to thank our speakers today for the quality of their insights, and in particular for the pragmatism that has characterized their thinking. The picture they have painted is stark and vivid. It's a portrait of markets and economies profoundly impacted by a changing climate. But it's also a record of real progress, as our Lady Mayor outlined. And as the ensuing discussions have affirmed, the global community has demonstrated its willingness to collaborate on key areas of the green transition. From insurability to investability, the consensus is clear. a financial system that can better account for the adverse effects of climate change and more effectively mitigate against them, is a system infinitely more resilient and secure. Whether it's clean and diversified energy systems, insulating economies from the kind of volatility which has punctuated global energy markets in recent years, or the central relevance of physical climate risk exposure to the stability and returns of financial investments, or the decisive role of nature-based solutions with local communities at their centre in the resilience of our supply chains. Today's conversation has coalesced around a fundamental, urgent truth. Decarbonisation and the transition to net zero are not merely moral imperatives, they are vital economic safeguards, basic guarantors of global prosperity and national security. From physical to financial, today's summit has in large part addressed questions of risk and liability. There is another danger we must confront, arguably more pervasive and certainly more politically salient than ever. In a word, that threat is cynicism. Populist scepticism around the economic potential of decarbonisation and climate finance, and mounting hostility to actions which have been caricatured as degrowth and anti-prosperity. In response, we must advocate for the net zero transition in terms which address the sceptics and which reassure electorates that decarbonisation and climate finance are pro-growth. We must make the unashamedly hard-nosed case for carbon markets as a global opportunity which could well be valued at more than 250 billion by 2050. And we must assure UK businesses of the scale of their transition finance opportunity, whose value McKinsey estimates to be north of 1 trillion by the end of the decade. But this argument cannot be confined to rhetoric alone. We must move further and faster to defy the doubters. We must capitalise on the upcoming opportunities for global cooperation, and we must evidence their utility, not as arenas for self-congratulation, but as workshops for tangible, effective action. Because the value of discussion must be measured in the action it precedes, and action can no longer be deferred. The size and scope of the task at hand are presented in the Baku to Belém roadmap, a comprehensive strategy to meet the 1.3 trillion a year goal for international finance to emerging markets for clean energy, adaptation, nature, just transition, and loss and damage by 2035. According to the independent high-level expert group on climate finance, half of this figure will have to be provided by private sources by 2035. That's 16 times more than the 40 billion delivered in 2022. So more than a period of incremental progress, 2026 must be a year of exponential breakthroughs. Turkey's confirmation of this 1.3 trillion target as the centrepiece of COP31's focus is then all for the good. But before Antalya, let's galvanise action at New York Climate Week in September. And let's work quickly and methodically to ensure that the UK's hosting of the G20 summit next year becomes, for history, the moment at which years of dialogue and steady progress materialise into rapid, structural, systemic reform. Let us borrow from Shakespeare's Tempest once more and achieve the sea change upon which the prosperity of our children and future generations depends. For your participation today and for your contribution tomorrow and far into the future, you have my thanks. And now, on a slightly lighter turn, it is my happy duty to invite you all upstairs to the old ballroom for a summer drinks reception where, in the spirit of true British summer hospitality, I understand there will be Pimm's. Thank you.